Welcome to Mike's Mr. October and More, Episode 6. Today's episode, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and I was thinking, like, from the 1960s, like, who would I think would be my decade team, all-star team? So I came up with a list of players who I think would be my all-star team for the 1960s. So I pulled out each player from the last year, which was 1969. There's one player that did not have a card from 1969, and that was a pitcher. And I won't tell you who it is, but you probably know who it will be. But anyways, so I'm going to be going around the horn, so to speak, as who I think are my all-star team, or would be my all-star team. So playing first base, and I also will be giving out statistics why I think they should be the all-star decade team of the 60s. So my first baseman pick would be none other than Willie Stretch McCovey. He actually had two cards. He also had an all-star card that year. And there he is. And the reason why I picked him is because Willie McCovey had 300 home runs even for the decade, 821 RBIs, a 279 average for the decade. He was MVP for 1969, and he was a four-time All-Star. And my second baseman would be none other than Charlie Hustle, Pete Rose. I know he played several positions. And the reason why I picked him was he hit 75 home runs for the decade, 433 RBIs, a nice 309 average, 1,327 hits, and he had 218 doubles for the decade. And he had a second card also for 1969. That's his all-star card. Okay. And my shortstop, now there really wasn't a clear cut winner for shortstop, but I picked him, and he is not a Hall of Famer, but he did play an integral part when the Detroit Tigers won their World Series, and that would be shortstop Dick McAuliff. He did hit a home run in the World Series, and he had an important hit in Game 6. So his stats were 142 home runs, 487 RBIs, a 255 average, a three-time All-Star selection, and he had 1,056 hits. And my third baseman is going to be the human vacuum cleaner, and that would be Brooks Robinson. Okay. It's one of the few cards that I actually have slab, but I bought it this way. Anyways, Brooks Robinson had 186 home runs, 836 RBIs. Actually, that's more than Willie McCovey. Wow, I just realized that. 277 average. He was a one-time MVP in 1964, and he had All-Star appearance every year during the 1960s. And here's his second card from 1969, his own All-Star card. Now, there were a lot of great outfielders for the 60s, but I picked my first selection, other than Hammering Hank Aaron. He had 375 home runs, 1,107 RBIs, which was the most for the decade. Really nice average of 308, and he was an all-star each year of the 1960s. And my next outfielder is none other than the Say Hey Kid himself, Willie Mays. Actually, one of the few cards where he's actually smiling. It's a nice card of him. He had 350 home runs, 1,003 RBIs, an even 300 average. One-time MVP, which was 1965, where he hit, I think it was, 54 home runs? Or 52? Yeah. I know he hit over 50 home runs that season. And he was an MVP in 1965, and he was an all-star every year of the 1960s. And the third outfielder is going to be none other than Roberto Clemente. What a phenomenal player he was. Unfortunately, his career was cut short by a few years. But anyways, Roberto Clemente had 177 home runs, 862 RBIs, and a nice 328 average. He was an MVP in 1966, and he was a 9-time All-Star selection. The only year I don't think he made it was 1968. He had kind of an off year that year. And my catcher, he is a Hall of Famer, but not as a player, but as a manager. And that's going to be Joe Torre. Joe Torre had 160 home runs, which was the most as a catcher, 653 RBIs, a 293 average, and a 5-time All-Star selection. For my pitchers, I picked 4. Basically like a starting rotation, so I don't think that this team would ever lose, honestly. Anyways, my first selection is going to be Bob Gibson. And if you ever watched some of the World Series highlights, he was smoking. Anyways, his record was 164 wins and 105 losses, 2.74 ERA. He was a 1-time Cy Young Award winner, MVP in 1968, 6-time All-Star selection, and he had 2,071 strikeouts. And this is also his All-Star card from 1969. And my next picture, and I think he had the most wins for the decade, and that's going to be the high-kicking P-Juan Marichal. Really doesn't get much hobby love. Anyways, his record was 191 wins and only 88 losses for the decade. That's unbelievable. He had a 2.57 ERA. He was an 8-time All-Star selection, and he had 1,840 strikeouts. My next selection is going to be Jim Bunning. He's not a Hall of Famer. Oh, actually he is. My mistake. He is a Hall of Famer. And his record was 150 wins and 118 losses. He did throw a perfect game on June 21st, 1964, against the New York Mets. And also, it's interesting to note that he was a U.S. Senator from Kentucky. And if I'm not mistaken, he also threw a no-hitter in the American League. And my last pitcher is going to be the only pitcher that does not have a 1969 card. And his last card was 1966. And that's none other than Sandy Koufax. It's a beautiful card, well centered. sharp, crisp. Beautiful card. That's his last playing year card, if I'm not mistaken. And Sandy Koufax had 137 wins and 60 losses. ERA of 2.36. He was a All-Star selection each year of the 1960s that he played. He had 1,840 strike. My mistake. His ERA 2.36 ERA, 1,910 strikeouts, 3-time Cy Young Award winner. He was an MVP in 1963, and he was a 6-time All-Star selection. And his career was cut short from arm problems, so he retired early. So that is going to be my All-Star selection of the 1960s. And I'm going to show you all the cards laid out flat as a recap. And here is my All-Star team for the 1960s. I think they'd be pretty much unbeatable. You know, Roberto Clemente, Willie Mays, and Hank Aaron. How would you like to have those three playing every day for you in the outfield? And your pitchers. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. So if you like it, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching Mike's Mr. October and more.